guys, Jesse Camacho here. I had an absolute blast talking with Connor, a courageous nerd, about all things Locke and Key, what's coming up down the pipeline, and what I hope is coming down the pipeline. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation. We had a great time.
So welcome to the Courageous Nerd YouTube channel. My name's Connor. I'm joined today by Jesse Camacho once again. Jesse, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, Connor. Thanks so much for having me on again. I always love checking in, and what a better time to do it than as we wrap up the show.
Absolutely, and I feel like in some sense I've been along the journey, and we've spoken once for each season, and some people may not realize you were actually the first ever person I interviewed with this platform. I mean, I didn't do the videos until a bit later, so it may not look that way, but like, article and discussion wise, you were the first. And I suppose like in that couple of years, like how has your life and career changed?
Oh, well, first of all, I really appreciated you having me on then. It was like early in the show, and my character's a little more on the sidelines. So I was just so happy that people wanted to chat. So thank you for having me on back then.
Absolutely.
It's been an interesting couple of years, personally and professionally. I mean, the show has definitely brought a really fun thing into my life, that I get to interact with fans more. And I'm on a show that deals with a fun, rich, fantastical mythology, which is always something that I loved growing up and still love, that I still watch. So being on the other side of a show, like Locke and Key, I was always a big Stranger Things fan, Lost, all those kind of cool shows. So actually getting to be a part of that in any capacity was really fun for me. Personally, it was a great thing, because during the pandemic, I had somewhere I could go and I could see people and interact with people when we were in a crazy lockdown. So just that in itself made us all very close as a cast and a crew. And so, there's not really a huge personal update, because there wasn't really much to do besides shoot the show, funnily enough. So yeah, things are good. It's definitely bittersweet to say goodbye, but what an amazing 3-year journey that I got to go on with the show. So I can't complain.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned being a fan of Lost, and people might not realize the connection they're making straight away, in that those the two shows, Lost and Locke and Key, share an EP and Carlton Cuse. And something that you told me, I don't know if you remember telling me this last time we spoke, and it's like, I thought a really interesting bit of trivia, and maybe you were joking, I don't know, that Carlton Cuse inspired the name of Alfonso Ribeiro's character on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes, that's apparently true. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's I think, I don't know if he told me that personally, but I've definitely at least read him saying that.
Yeah.
And it's like a known, yes, I think it's a known thing within the industry. Maybe I'm not sure how widely known that is, but yes, that's true.
I remember looking into it after you said it, and I think it was something like he went to college with people who created Fresh Prince, and obviously, they were his friends, they would remember his name, and so I mean, just joining the dots from that, yeah.
And Carlton's such a great name too.
Yeah,
such a cool name. So that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose obviously, like with Locke and Key, like as you were saying, season 3 dropped on like August 10th, I believe it was, right?
Yeah, I believe it was I think it was the Wednesday of that week.
Yeah,
so I think it was the 10th or the 11th, but I think it was the 10th. I think you're right.
Yeah, which is only a few days ago either way, as of like when we're recording this. It's still very recent as we're talking. And I suppose obviously, from a creative standpoint, how different was making season 3 compared to seasons 1 and 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So it's sort of like, to put it in other terms, like season 1 was like really exciting, but it was a little kind of unknown, right? We knew that we loved what we were doing. We knew that it was based on source material that was incredible. But the tone of our show is a little different. The vibe of our show is a little different. So getting to put that first season out there and seeing that people really responded to it, and going back for season 2, there was a lot of like palpable excitement, especially because the world was shut down. So we were also excited to go back, and it was this like, all of us were coming back, and it was this huge group, and it was like really fun. And we were working through this crazy time in the world, and we had each other. And then towards the end of season 2, there was a bit of a bloodbath on the show. and they killed off a lot of people. They killed off several characters that were dear friends, and some people were written off the show and all this stuff. So season 3 was definitely it felt more intimate. It felt a lot smaller. But that was also kind of a nice thing in a way. I mean, I missed every single cast member that wasn't there. A lot of them are my very dear friends, and might have had more that they could have done on the show, but just by like the way that Meredith and Carlton, who are both geniuses, mapped it out. The third season was a very personal family season. In a lot of ways, third season is the most dangerous and the darkest in a lot of ways too. But yeah, it was just smaller. I felt like those of us that were still there, we kind of like, it was more like, it was, the party was nearing an end and it was still a lot of fun, but there were only a couple people left. And I was like, let's enjoy the last bit of this before we leave. And we certainly did that. And I think the season is excellent. And I think, having a big, almost Avengers Infinity War second season, and then to have a smaller like Avengers Endgame third season was a really cool direction to go in.
Absolutely. And kind of like on that theme of like a family oriented season, I suppose, in general, I've noticed that the Locke and Key cast seems to have a lot of passion for the show, and there's a lot of heart, I think, that goes into it. So why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think, I think it starts with the fact that we're all fans of this genre. Many of us were big fans of the graphic novel, and just the vibe that Meredith and Carlton really brought to that set, and all the directors that we got to work with. There's so many to name. That it was a very fun environment. It felt like going to play. Like it really felt like, oh, I get to go to recess every day at work for, many, many hours. And especially for the Savini Squad scenes, I can say that, our stuff was usually a little lighter and a little more fun than some of the darker elements of the show. But I just think that when you have an environment where everyone loves each other, everyone is having fun together, it kind of creates this creativity and this spark and this passion that it's hard to mimic in an environment where maybe people aren't as copacetic and they don't get along as well. Like everyone got along and had so much fun. I can't really remember many moments of tension or argument. Like we just loved being there. Like I was so excited to go to that set every day. Like when I would wrap a day and be like, oh, I'm off for like a month, it was like such a bummer because I just wanted to go back and see those people. And I think that's really where it comes from. It's a passion for the genre and the material and the people you're working with. And that's not always the case.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to say, I feel like, in 3 years, it's a big kind of changing or growing experience for anyone, but for some of your castmates, quite literally, and that some of them were literal children or young adults when they started. And, I'm thinking like along the lines of Emilia Jones, Jackson Robert Scott, Kobe Bode as well, was quite young. So I suppose how have you found that experience of watching those guys, grow and evolve over the 3 years you did the show?
Well, it's funny, I only got as close as I got with Jackson and Kobe in seasons 2 and 3. I mean, even in both those seasons, I don't have a ton with them. But Kobe, I really got to know at the events we went to, at the premiere, or we'd go to dinner and stuff, and we just became super tight. And I mean, he's such a cool guy. I mean, first of all, he's super inspiring. He's a super great actor. And he's just killing it. And he's a fully formed man. And I have always felt that way earlier on. I mean, and then you've got somebody like Jackson, who was a literal child when we started. I think he was 9 or 10, and he was so small. There's a picture of me at the season 1 wrap party where I'm carrying him on my shoulders. Like, but now, he's almost as tall as Griffin. I saw him at the premiere, and we went to me, his family, and Kobe and his mom, Rachel, all went to Universal Studios a couple weeks ago. And, Jackson's not much shorter than me anymore. And he's, he's got a great fashion sense on him. He showed up at the premiere in this like nice suit, and he looks good. And he's, he's also just now he's a man. He's a fully formed individual, very smart guy, very talented guy. Emilia Jones is she's a freak. She's in a league of her own. I mean, Emilia is one of, honestly, the most incredible actors and human beings I've ever worked with. Everybody making any movie ever should hire Emilia Jones. And she was like that the first day I met her. So she's obviously grown and, since I met her, like during season 1, it's funny to talk about now. During our first season, I'd be like, what are you doing this weekend? You want to go out? We should all go do something. And she'd be like, oh, I can't. I'm taking sign language classes for this movie I'm doing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. She's like, yeah, I'm doing this like indie called Coda. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And now here we are now.
Everyone knows Coda. Yeah.
Best Picture. And she's, rocket ship to the moon. But she hasn't changed one iota from when she was the lead of the show in season 1 and hadn't done Coda to now, where she's maybe one of the most in-demand actresses out there. She is super grounded, super humble, super smart, and just incredible. So, there's definitely been growth with some people, but she's someone who I found has been fully formed and mature and awesome since the very first day I met her.
I will say, speaking, because obviously for anyone who doesn't know, Emilia's English, and speaking as a fellow Brit, I feel like a lot of the time I almost forget that she's English, because when I hear English actors doing different accents, a lot of the time I can kind of hear inflections of where they say certain words. I'm like, oh yeah, they're English, I knew that. But then I feel like most of the time, I'd say like 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even cross my mind that she's English. And it might be the occasional word I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that now. But like she kind of sells the American accent really well, is my point.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I run into fans all the time that don't know that she's British, and unless it's between action and cut, she's not an actor that stays in the accent. Between setups, between takes, she goes back to her natural speaking voice. So for me, it's almost weirder for me to watch the show and be like, oh right, yes, of course. But the accent also comes very easy to her. She's very naturally gifted. I mean, she's naturally gifted in so many ways, but like. I remember there was one day she sent me a voice message late at night asking for the pronunciation. I think it was from season 2. It was something Maritime Museum, and she was having trouble whatever way it didn't fit in her mouth properly, or whatever. But she crushed it, and it's weirder for me to watch the show and hear her in an American accent than it is which is the reverse, I'm sure, for all the fans.
Yeah, I will say actually, because it's interesting. Obviously, you being Canadian, and obviously that accent or Canadian accent is closer to an American accent than a British one. But are there like subtle changes you have to make in the way you pronounce certain things, because you obviously meant to be in Massachusetts? Is that kind of something you think about, or you just kind of rely on the fact, I already sound kind of close, so people won't really pick up on it?
No, it's definitely a thing with Canadian and American. I mean, yes, it's much closer. Yeah. And I'm from, Montreal and Toronto. So our vocal sounds are just automatically much similar to America. But I know there's some place like small towns in Northern Ontario, or a place where you can hear that thick Canadian accent. That's like such a fun, awesome accent. But, there's certain words, like sorry versus sorry. Sorry is Canadian. Sorry is American. I grew up saying sorry, so it didn't really, but there's like little things like that American casting agents will pick up on and say, well, they sound Canadian. Again, you're right, it's not as big a leap as like British to American or British to Canadian, but it's there, and there's words that people look out for that we have to be very kind of conscious of.
It's definitely interesting, because like people might not realize that some of, really core actors are actually Canadian and meant to be like in this all-American town. I mean, I'm thinking like Connor Jessup, who plays Tyler, is Canadian. Aaron Ashmore, Uncle Duncan, Canadian. And I think it's a great kind of testament that it's just a seamless fit. It's not something you necessarily think about unless you already know. Yeah, and
guys like Aaron and Connor, I think are so adept at it at this point. They've both shot things in the States. They've played Americans their whole life, so for them it's a really easy transition. But I think there are some Canadian actors that sometimes struggle a little bit with that. I did a show many years ago in Winnipeg where a great guy named Ben, who played my older brother in that show, I know that was something that he had to make a really concerted effort to make sure he got rid of when he started reading for American stuff after that show. And now he does it flawlessly, but it took time. Like, it's the way you speak, right? It's just it's a tough thing to change.
Absolutely. I suppose kind of shifting focus back to season 3 of Locke Key, and we kind of find Doug as the only male member of the Savini Squad still in Matheson, and I suppose like how did you kind of find exploring that new dynamic with Doug alongside the girls?
Well, it was a blast.
Yeah.
I love those girls. It was super fun. It
Mm,
was, it's funny. I thought about that as well going into it. I remember on
mm,
the kind of we were wrapping up season 2, and Patrice was going to be, was leaving,
mm,
and I was like, oh wow, like I'm the only male left in the squad. Griffin and
mm.
Patrice
Yeah.
are gone. But I mean, at that point, we were all so tight that it was a really fun dynamic to explore. And I think the thing with Doug is very much in a good way. He's a follower. Doug is not the leader. He
Yeah.
is never. That's just not his position. I think he's a good like vice president. He's a good
Yeah.
co-captain. He's not a great captain. And I think in the first 2 seasons, the leader of the group was Scott. And then I think when we
Yeah.
get to season 3, I think the ball's kind of, it's interesting. I think it's both Kinsey and Zadie. I think they kind of pass the ball back to
Mm,
each other. And
yeah.
Alicia and I are more kind of like listening to what they say. But it was a really fun dynamic to explore. And I love all 3 of them. And, we always felt like we had our little club on set, the Savini Squad. So we dearly, dearly missed Patrice and Griffin. Like they're the best. But it was fun for us to just kind of, to keep going and enjoy those moments together. It was fantastic. And I think Doug kind of just, he goes with the flow. He
Yeah.
doesn't get
Definitely.
phased by that kind of thing. I mean, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I will kind of say to that, tie into that when we last spoke, and maybe it was just like a contract thing, but like I remember you speaking very cryptically. You kind of saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
if I'm in season 3, like or they're filming, whether or not I'm there." So like, was Doug ever at risk of being killed off before season 3, or that just you being careful?
So yeah, I think at that point, I think I was shooting season 3, and I think I knew I was in season 3.
Sure.
But yeah, it was just because there was such a like kind of a body count at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
I was just trying to be a little cryptic. I actually asked Meredith, our creator and showrunner, on the last day. I said, now you can tell me the show's over. Like, was there ever a point where Doug, Zadie, or Abby were kind of on the chopping block? And I think she was being honest when she said, not really. Like they love the Savini Squad, and I think she kind of said it would have felt very dark to like take them off the board. I mean, season 2 is brutal with Jackie. With Jackie, that's like one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the whole show. And Genevieve and Connor were so great in that scene. But I think that with the squad, they're more used for kind of the humor and the lightness, whereas with Jackie, that was a very kind of real relationship, and she was more of a tragic character. So I think that was maybe what the contrast was in terms of why the Savini Squad were never in danger, but people like, Kevin Alves' character, Yavi, or Jackie, why those characters were maybe easier, not easier, that's not the right word, but, better candidates for that kind of a thing.
Sure.
Was I think because the squad was kind of just fun and goofy, and they liked keeping that element intact, would be my guess. But apparently we were never on the chopping block. So
yeah, I mean, I think it would become a very different show because like, we'll just take away all of Kinsey's friends, and and then in that decision, as I say, the tone would have been completely different if she's grieving this whole group. And I think personally they probably made the right call in terms of keeping the tone as it was, and having Kinsey, or letting Kinsey have that support network of the Savini Squad.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm obviously super grateful that I got to be there, the whole way. But in contrast to that, even though somebody like Genevieve Jackie is taken off the board, what amazing material she got to do, and she got like such a like wonderful scenes and screen time in season 2. And I mean, Genevieve is just so good. She just knocked it out of the park. And like Kevin Alves, he got to have a great run as a demon. He got to do all this kind of fun stuff. So I think, everyone, whether they made it all the way or didn't, really got their due and their worth. So it was, I think, and that's, again, a testament to the writers. It's a lot of mouths to feed, and they did a great job giving everybody a moment to shine.
Yeah. And you mentioning Kevin Alves reminds me, because I spoke to him in January, and we were kind of talking about, the show being based off, like, the graphic novel comic book originally, and just kind of thinking about that kind of thing that, if your character's named Locke, that's probably decent job security you've got there. Or like, whereas like if a character dies in like the second book, you're probably not going to be around very long on the TV show. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Savini Squad didn't exist in the comic books. So like, was that ever? Because obviously, whereas that some of the characters might have had an idea of where they might go based on what they've read, you don't have that reference to work with. So like, how was kind of grappling with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because it was kind of a good thing and a bad thing. It ended up being a great thing for us, I think, because I think Scott is in the book, and she has another friend. I believe his name is Jamal, and I think that like that was sort of where they got the Savini Squad from. Scott's very different in the graphic novels, sure you know. Yeah. So it was exciting in that our fate wasn't written, and those two characters in the graphic novel had a lot of amazing kind of meaty things to do. But it was also scary in that, like, oh, if this doesn't work, we could kill them off. You know, we don't need them around. So, but it was very exciting. Like getting the scripts every week was sort of like, is this it? Like, you know, I remember reading, especially in season 1, the cave episode where the caves are flooding. I knew when I signed on to do the show that the last episode that Doug and Zadie were in was episode 6. So when I read it, I was like, oh, we're going to drown in the caves. Like that's obviously why we're not in the rest of the season.
Yeah.
But then at the end, I said, oh, and Meredith and Carlton were very open. They're like, no. If we come back, you guys will be back. It's like, oh, okay, cool. But you know, while we were getting the script for that episode, I was like, I hadn't shot yet. So I was like, oh, wow. Like this is obviously where it's a wrap on Doug. But you know, apparently they had a good feeling about Doug and Zadie, and they kept us around. So that was nice.
Yeah, you know, I guess, you know, you had a lot of scenes with the actors playing the Savini Squad throughout the show, but I suppose kind of shifting focus to someone you didn't have too many scenes with, but you had a really tense scene with Jackson Robert Scott in season 3, that giving, there's quite a crucial plot point there that I might not want to give away, like the context of that scene. And like, I suppose like with Doug being unaware of that context, like how was, because obviously you're balancing with what I know as Jesse and what Doug is thinking in the scenes, like how was filming that kind of obviously
that was another that was another scene. I mean, I think obviously I don't want to give a ton away, but like I when I read that scene, I was so excited because you're right, I hadn't worked with Jackson yet, and without, you know, being too spoilery about the context of it, I'm a big fan of Jackson's work, and he's done other movies where he's had to play similar beats to what he's playing in that scene, and I think he does it so well. Yeah, and at that point, him and I had become really good buddies. I do these silly behind the scenes videos on my Instagram called On Set with Jesse Camacho that that Jackson loved, and he started like jumping in them with me, so we were good buddies. So when I read that scene, not only was I super tense reading it, but I was like, oh wow, I get like to have a cool meaty scene with Jackson, and we had a blast shooting it. And he's, again, I won't give credit, he's very creepy in the scene, and he's a really, really strong young actor. Like, and we just said that we were like giggling and laughing, and you know, I think it played very, very well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, people might not know this because I love this kind of like trivia stuff that before like your Netflix version of Locke and Key was like even produced, there was, you know, Hulu tried to make their own version, and when Netflix acquired the show, like Jackson was the only person they kept from the Hulu cast, or at least, you know, in the same role. I believe Thomas Barnett, right, who plays Sam Lesser, was Rufus, and
yes,
they were the two that got carried over. So I think, you know, that's definitely a testament to Jackson's, like, you know, talent and skill, especially in the role of Bode.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's kind of the only guy that you can even imagine doing it at this point. And yeah, I remember I read for that original Hulu pilot. I read for Rufus as well.
Okay.
But I think it's yes, you know, that's something that I would love to see one day. I wonder if they would ever air that. I know the Fox pilot is out there somewhere, I think. But the Hulu pilot, I'd be so curious to watch it. But yeah, I mean, it was a show with a long road, and I'm glad that, you know, we got to do a beginning, middle, and end, and the writers knew they were ending the show, and they got to end it on their terms. Because yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Joe Hill had been like waiting a long time to see it come alive. Yeah,
absolutely. And I would say, like, in terms of like the actors in the show itself, you're kind of in the middle, I would say, because obviously you've got the likes of like Darby Stanfield, Aaron Ashmore, kind of like working for so many years, and then there's the actors who are like younger than you are. You're kind of like in the middle of the spectrum. But I suppose even with that in mind, like obviously not your first job, Locke Key wasn't. But like I suppose like what lessons will you take from your time on the show?
It's another great question. It's funny. I feel like I learned from everybody. Like I when I go into any new experience, any new project, my favorite thing about them, the first question I asked if I ever book a job is who else is cast, because I love to see and I add people on Instagram. Like I messaged Emilia and Patrice and Connor before we even started. I sent them a message saying, "Hey, awesome. Can't wait to work with you." Yeah, I just they were all very kind and responded but I kind of go into everything trying to be a student, trying to be a sponge. Like technically, yes, I've been maybe working longer than some of them, but a lot of them have had different experiences than me. Like, more, what's the word I'm looking for? More kind of big project experience than I have. Like I learned so much from Emilia. Like every day I learned something from Emilia, and Emilia's, 11 years younger than me.
Right.
But like just being a leader on the set and the way she treats people and the choices she makes as an actress, that's something that even though I've been in the industry maybe longer than she has, that I haven't fully developed those skills as much as she has yet. So, and Connor is another one. The guy's an encyclopedia. He's so smart. He's not only is he one of the great young actors around, he's also got the mind to be a director, and you learn so much from him and everybody. And then of course you look at the vets like Darby, a great, they say number one because when you're shooting, you get call sheets. She's the number one on the show. And what a great number one she is, the way that she treats everyone and she's so talented and effortless and works so hard. So, I learned Jackson, just like being a young kid and being so reliant on instinct, that's what, and I remember when I was a kid and I did that, and you kind of lose that as you get older. Your choices become more calculated and sometimes less honest because they're not like, you can see it. Whereas Jackson is a kid. He's just like, he just reads, he goes, well, I'm going to do it like that. He just does it. Whereas, the word you get like, well, maybe I can do it like that. Is that going to work? And it doesn't read as well. So I learned something from everybody, Aaron Ashmore. I want to be Aaron Ashmore when I grow up, even though he's not that much older than me, but yes. So I learned from everybody, and I definitely try not to come into anything with any kind of, oh, I have all this experience. For me, it's more like keep your eyes open, watch, and learn as much as you can.
Absolutely. I will just like a couple of observations from what you just said. One of them being something I think the show did really well is that they cast a really good family, rather than just being like four actors kind of playing a family. Like they work really well as a family unit, for them. And I think that's an underrated thing to actually pull off. That it isn't just like four actors reading lines to each other, that they feel like a family. It's really well done, I think so anyway.
Yeah, and even goes back to when they had Bill Hicks in season 1 as Rendell.
Yeah,
he fit into that so well. I mean, the chemistry he had with Darby was beautiful, and the chemistry he had with both kids, and then or all three kids, I should say. Sorry. They just, again, it goes back to these people all loved each other and had great chemistry and worked hard together. Listen, you can fake anything. I've worked on shows where people didn't get along, or on screen they have amazing chemistry. But I think that like a real love and affection for each other, and talent too, they're all extremely talented. That just, it just equals a beautiful, loving, fictional family that you believe. And I think the show did that really, really well.
Yeah, I will say as well, like on a personal level to you, like I feel like you were the perfect person to be the first person interviewed from the show. You seem like the perfect ambassador, like for this like Locke Key
thank you
community, like your passion for it, and then just like the way you speak about like everyone else, and even like it's a great lead in, because when I speak to people from the show and say, oh, by the way, I've been interviewed Jesse, their faces like light up. Oh yeah, Jesse's great, and it's a really kind of great connecting factor. And obviously I've interviewed other people who are friends of yours, just seem to have that really great outreach with people. And yeah, like it's infectious, I think, across the people you're friends with and who you work with, but based on who I've spoken to anyway.
Oh, thank you. That means a whole lot. I really appreciate that, and it makes my day to hear that, because I just love working on stuff and being on set and getting to know people. And I think sometimes I've been accused of being a little over enthusiastic,
Right.
But that's fine with me, and that means a lot. So I appreciate you saying that. And I'll never stop wanting to talk about this show and the experience with these people, or really any project I've done. But this one really does stand out in kind of my heart. It was just such a personal experience. This and a show I did in Canada many years ago were kind of like the two touchstones, I feel, of my career.
Less Than Kind.
Yes, Less Than Kind. Yes, exactly. That one was I was sort of the front man on that show. And those people, it felt like a real family too. And it was when I was a teenager too, and like becoming like a grown up, and it was all in that period. So I feel like I learned a lot there. But Locke Key was kind of a similar, very it helped mold me as a person, these two shows. So hearing people say kind things like that is really wonderful.
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose kind of it's a good time for this next question, and that moving on from Locke and Key, and with those like 3 seasons kind of like under your belt, in terms of other projects. I know last time we spoke, we discussed Crossroads. I suppose is there anything else in that vein or other projects you've kind of got working on?
Yeah, funnily enough, actually, Kevin Alves, who played Yavi on Locke and Key and is now killing it on Yellow Jackets, which is, if anybody hasn't seen that show, check it out. It's an incredible show. And my buddy Peter from Popternative, the 3 of us have gotten together, and we Peter and I write, and Kevin directs. He's an amazing director. He's a good writer as well, but I think Peter and I kind of do most of the writing. And we shot this really fun horror short called Desolate, which will be coming out soon, that my sister is actually the lead in.
Nice.
Which was a lot of, that wasn't that was Peter and Kevin's idea. I was like, I'm not gonna jump in on this. I'm not gonna weigh in an opinion. You guys pick who you want.
Nepotism.
So no nepotism here. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. There's a couple things that are coming up down the pipe. One was really exciting and kind of a dream come true for me. And one is another show that I'm not sure I'm allowed to speak about yet, either of those things. But when I am, you let me know. I'll come back and tell you about it. So there's some fun, exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. And also I've had a cartoon that I've done for many years called Agent Binky on Treehouse in Canada and the States. I'm not sure. Where I play like I play a cat, and it's super fun. And I've been lucky that I've gotten to do that the last couple of years. So that's sort of what's been going on these days.
Yeah, that sounds a whole lot. A lot like we've got plenty of ground to cover in the potential interview number 4 if we get to
Absolutely.
it. Absolutely. We'll keep that in the back burner. And I mean, because even I was thinking about this when we spoke last time, is before Locke and Key season 2 even came out. So that's why you're being especially cryptic, because you'd filmed all of 2, you were shooting season 3. That's a lot of stuff to be sitting on and like not give away. So I mean, fair play to that. You gave nothing away at all. Like, I didn't get anything out of you. And
well, I was just so nervous. It's like I was like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, what I'm not allowed to say. I know that I think Connor and Emilia were allowed to say they were shooting season 3, but a lot of the supporting cast, I think, they wanted it to be a little more cryptic. So I don't know. I did my best, but I appreciate it. And it's fun that I get to be a little bit cryptic now, and I'm excited. I'm excited about the things that I can't talk about. I think they're going to be really fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And people may have seen that on Instagram. We both asked ahead of this interview, people would send in some questions, and I got a couple back here, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce the usernames or the Instagram handles, but we'll make a go of it here. So this first question is from a user on Instagram called Karen Quello, or Cello. Again, sorry, Karen, for butchering your name, but anyway, this is the question that Karen asked. Quite simple. Do you, I guess, ship Kinsey and Gabe or Kinsey and Scott? And I feel like that's a very
Well, so that is a little tricky. I mean, look, the answer's Scott. I mean, one of them is literally a demon who's trying to murder her and her family. But in terms of like just chemistry, and in terms of trying to make me choose between Griffin and Patrice, that's so brutal. I mean, they're both such wonderful, sweet, dear friends. But I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'll answer for the show. And I think in the show, Doug would definitely be Team Scott. And I think, you don't need a demon in your life. You don't need to be hooking up with a demon. But you know, in real life, Griffin Gluck is nothing close to a demon. So yeah, I'm gonna go
Hopefully
Team
not.
Scott, but yeah, with the asterisks of how much I do love Gabe, and you know, seeing Griffin in those scenes too, when he's being Gabe with Kinsey. God, those are sweet. The scenes where you almost forget, and you're like, I just want him to be a nice guy so they can have a really nice relationship.
It's totally playing against type, because a lot of his other characters would have ended up with Kinsey with no issues. Like, he played a lot of like fresh face kind of you know, guy next door, you know, wholesome guy. Any of those characters could have ended up with Kinsey completely fine. And obviously it's Gabe who Kinsey unfortunately had to contend with. But
it was a stroke of genius casting Griffin, because exactly that is his reputation. That's what he's so good at. But he was also, like, as you say, like, what a different thing for him to get to play this kind of evil, you know, malevolent being, and he did it so well. So I was, you know, as someone who was a fan of his before I worked with him, I loved like American Vandal, and
it's a great show.
What's that great movie he did with Pete Davidson? But anyway, he's had a great career. Something Adolescent. But anyway, he was fantastic. That's a great movie.
Big Time Adolescent, I think it was.
There you go. And so working with him was really cool. But anyway, Team Scott, but it hurts me because I do love me some Gabe.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I remember last time we spoke as well, because I don't know if it was like confirmed or if I just didn't know this, of like, and I think we said it like off the recording, like, is Gabe some like poor guy who's been possessed, or is it like a real Gabe out there? But obviously no. It's not the case. It's literally just Dodge, plain Dodge.
Yeah, it's just a creation of Dodge.
I mean,
which is so dark.
I mean, I suppose just rephrase like Karen's question is asking Kinsey and Dodge or Kinsey and Scott, and if you put it that way, again, you know, there's only one answer, isn't there?
Yeah, and you know, it's true. There's really, you know, it's really kind of a hard question to think about too long without having to, you know, state the obvious problem with it. But it's also a testament to Emilia too, who just has chemistry with everybody she does a scene with. So yeah, but again, Scott. But I love this. Sorry, you know what? I'll phrase it this way. I love the idea of Gabe. I love the idea of Gabe and Kinsey, but I gotta go Scott.
Yeah. I think the last thing anyone wants is your boyfriend to be a literal demon. You know, I think if you can avoid that, you know, you'll be okay.
Fair.
You know, demon or like a filmmaker from Britain. I think, I'll go with the filmmaker.
It's a tough choice, but yeah, filmmaker from Britain usually is where people should go.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question we got here. Sydney's main thing was the handle on Instagram. And it's quite a wide-reaching question, but Sydney wants to know, what was your favorite scene that you shot on Locke Key? Just a nice, simple question there. And obviously, thank you to Karen for her question, and thank you to Sydney for this one. But
that's tough. It's you know what? It's really hard to beat the caves in season 1. Because again, as someone who is such a big fan of those kind of big, exciting, Lost, Stranger Things, you know, whatever, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like being on a big set like that, a big, exciting cave set that flooded, like it actually flooded the set while we were shooting it. You know, we were swimming in the water. It was like, I feel like you were in an action movie, and getting to do that with, you know, with all those people was just so exciting. But I'll say that's probably number one. But to give you two quick ones more, I think in season 2, I would say there was a fight scene with Gabe and Scott in the kind of the dorm room, and I just love that because we were all there and we were really all like, we were feeling really good and we felt like we had great vibes. And Alicia came on the show as Abby, and just that's kind of a tricky situation to be in for her, like coming in and joining a group that's already kind of fully established. And she's the greatest. I love Alicia. She's probably the one that I speak to the most these days, just because everyone's living far away. She lives in Toronto with me. Sure. And just like having the whole squad, like everyone together, and we were just vibing and having so much fun. And it was a long day, but it was a fun day. So that one has always really stuck out to me. And then, of course, in season 3, probably the scene where I got to be careful, I guess. In episode 3, there's a nice scene with the Savini Squad involving a song that was a lot of fun to shoot too. That just felt was just nice. It was just nice and cathartic. And again, without being too spoiled, we were saying kind of it was a swan song for a character.
It was the closing of a chapter, yeah.
Yes, and that was like when I remember shooting that, I was like, oh wow, we're almost done, and that was really kind of effective for me. So I would say those three, but The Caves is definitely probably number one.
Absolutely, and kind of like to your point of what you were saying of Alicia coming in on season 2, I feel like with any kind of show that gets at least to season 2, like that's probably I always look out for season 2, episode 1, because that's the episode where they've come back, they know how the show has been received, and I think sometimes you can kind of notice a little like difference in how they're going about the acting. Sometimes you can kind of like see the little subtleties, like maybe they're more confident. But yeah, I just always really enjoy like this season 2 premiere of any show just because of that little difference.
For sure. I mean, it's usually if you're doing a second season, like you say, the show has been successful and everyone's coming back, and it's like it's that. And if you watch a lot of shows too, the second season sometimes it looks a little different. Like if you watch, the lighting is a little different, so either brighter or darker. Like they've seen what worked and what didn't. So it's like you say, right? Like what in the characters worked and what didn't. What are the actors like? What did they see that they're bringing? What do they see that they're not? And so I agree. It's always a kind of a telling episode, the first episode of a second season. And again, I think it can be a very tricky time to join a show. But, I thought, Brendan Hines and Alicia did such a great job. And Liu, who's also new in the show, kind of came in and Jamie came in and did such a lovely, lovely job. And by the end of the show, it was like thinking about season 1 was weird. Like I think at one point I was talking about The Caves with Alicia, and she was like, "You realize I wasn't there, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's crazy." But anyway,
I suppose this is like the last question I had prepared, and I've definitely probably asked you a version of this in the past, but just kind of like in a wider sense, like what would you like to kind of accomplish or go after, or like, do you have any goals set for yourself as like the rest of this year and into the future?
Definitely, always. I think acting aside for a second, I think I'd love to get some of my writing off the ground. Like it was a dream come true doing that short with Kevin and Peter, and I'd love to do more of that. I've got my friend Alex Wiener, that's his real name, that I also write with. So getting some of those projects off the ground. And as an actor, again, I just love being on set. I just want to work. Like people say, like, what's your dream? Do you want to win an Oscar? Do you want to be rich and famous and all that stuff? It's like, sure, of course, that'd be awesome. An Oscar is every actor's dream. But for me, it's less about the fame and all that stuff. It's like I just want to make enough money to pay my rent and my bills and keep being on set. I'd love to get on another show like Locke Key, or I love like Kevin's on Yellow Jackets, like that. I love that show so much. So I love being in a group dynamic for extended period of time. So obviously another cool kind of plot driven show would be a blast. So those are, I think, the long-term plans for me as it stands right now. Is kind of like sad that it's over, happy that it happened, and on to the next thing.
I mean, that'll be kind of, I think, an interesting maybe shift for you, because I wonder if you'll go from being the guy who was in Less Than Kind to being oh yeah, he was Doug in Locke and Key, whether that be your calling card now, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I still, I think it seems, I'm not recognized a ton, but when I do, I'm very fortunate in that it's kind of a very balanced. There's, Less Than Kind, Locke and Key. I did a great show in Canada here called Working Moms. I did a couple episodes of that, and people recognize me from that too. So, I love the fact that it's not usually one thing. But I'm excited to see what the next potential thing is. Hopefully something's coming along soon.
Absolutely. Well, I guess obviously, thank you again, Jesse, for taking the time to chat, and just best of luck with everything going forward.
Thank you.
Career-wise, personally, and just all the best. Take care and stay safe.
Thanks. Thank you, you too. Thank you so much for having me on as usual, and I can't wait to come back and do it again with hopefully some more fun stuff to talk about.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.